Hey guys, and welcome to this new episode of the TDS Repair series. And today we're gonna work with the brakes. We're not gonna service them, but we're gonna do even more than that. If you would service your brakes, you would just need to bleed them and to sandpaper the disc and the brake pads. But we're gonna do far more than this. Yes, we are gonna do the bleeding, but we're also gonna do some internal cable routing because I gotta change my rear brake, buy a new one, and my brake cable goes inside of the frame. So we're gonna have to do some internal cable routing. So anyway, let's begin. So for the tools, you'll need a brake hose cutter or this hydraulic barb tool, an internal cable routing kit with magnets like the one from Park Tool, an 8mm Allen key, a 2.5 and 4mm Allen keys, a T8 and T10 Torx wrench, a Park Tool or Sram dot oil bleed kit, some .4 or 5.1 brake fluid, some isopropyl alcohol, some Sram butter or any grease compatible with the .4 or 5.1 fluid, some shop towels, the Sram Code RSC brake itself, and the proper olive and barb that comes with it in the same box, or you can buy separately. So the first thing you gotta do is secure your bike. I'm talking about while we're gonna work on the brakes, there's gonna be some oil dripping, and we don't want this oil to get on the disc or the brake pad. So that's why you gotta remove the two discs and the brake pads from both of your brake. In my case, I just removed the rear wheel and I removed the front disc and also the brake pads. So now what I gotta do is just remove that rear brake. So currently my rear brake is the TRP Quadium, but I'm gonna swap it with a Sram Code RSC. Alright, so first we're gonna unscrew the big nut on the front of the bike. Alright, so let's start by removing that protective cap. So now you gotta take a wrench and finally unscrew that little bolt. And there might be some oil dribbling from it, and that's okay, that's normal. But there shouldn't be a lot, just a few little dribbles. So here we go, the olive and barb. So now to remove those tiny little parts at the end of the brake that are called olive and barb, we can't really remove them by hand. We're gonna cut the hose and then insert some new one, but we're not gonna insert a new one as we're gonna change the brake completely. So for this job, I recommend you this tool, which has a blade for perfectly cutting those brake hose, and also it's got that tiny little thing at the end. And you know, when you gotta put an olive and barb inside of the brake hose, you need to tap with something on the barb to get it inside of the hose. But with this tool, you don't have to do this. You just gotta fix your cable in this little slot right here. Just gotta fix it in this little slot and then put a olive and barb at the end right here and then just push and it's getting inside. Really easy to use tool, but this will work on the TRP, but on the SRAM it's got a threaded olive and barb, so we're not going to use that except for cutting the hose, which is extremely useful. And with this tool, it's really easy to do that. So now let's just cut the hose. Place it somewhere around here, you know, not a lot, but just enough. So yeah, now just cut it. Alright, and here you got your perfectly cut brake hose. So now we did that to actually be able to conduct the hose through the frame and get it out from here. So now this is a really easy step. Just pull on this cable right here. Here we go, I've got my brake hose. Alright, so now I'm getting rid of my zip ties that are holding the hose. Alright, here we go, now I just gotta remove that brake system right here. Alright, here we go, now I've got my whole brake with me. So now it's time to put the new brake on the bike. But to do so, we gotta create a path that goes inside of the frame and that will just conduct the brake. So we don't have to put the brake hose inside and try to get where it's gonna end up, which is quite impossible. So that's why you gotta buy this Park Tool magnet internal cable routing kit. So in this kit, you got one magnet behind me and 4 metallic cables. So each cable is for a specific use. And in our case, we want to use this little threaded one. See, with those tiny little threads, that's the one you want to use. And as I told earlier, on the SRAM brakes, the olive and bar are some screwable ones, and they're not some knockable ones. Because usually you gotta hold the hose and knock with a hammer, but right there we just gotta screw that in. So now just undo this. Alright, here we go. So now take the end with the magnet and take your magnet. So now insert that magnet inside of your frame. Insert it like this. Take your magnet and conduct it to the exit. And that's why I love this tool so much, because it's so easy and it makes just your life so much easier. This is just incredible. So yeah, now we gotta take our new brake. Alright, so here we go, my brand new brake. Oh, this is looking awesome. Alright, so the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the brake pads, because as we told, we don't want any contamination on the brake pads by the oil. Okay, so first of all, remove that tiny little protective thing right here. Now take your 2.5mm Allen key and unscrew that little nut, that little screw. You can put this thing back in, and we can put the protective little thing back on. Alright, and here we go. Now we're literally gonna do the same thing as we did with the TRP brake to remove it, but now we're gonna do it to put that back in there. So first thing, you're gonna remove that little boot step, remove it, and yeah, so as we did, we gotta unscrew it, and unscrew. Okay, that was actually quite a lot, but usually there's not that much that comes out from in there, but now there's a lot that just came out from the brake lever. So yeah, we're definitely gonna have to bleed this, and even if it doesn't do it, you still gotta bleed it after you've installed it. So as we did earlier, we gotta cut it. Yeah, I know it sounds strange to actually cut a brand new brake, but it's what we gotta do. Place it somewhere like this. We're not gonna cut a lot of the hose for the moment, but yeah, for the moment just take like this, not a lot, just a tiny bit, and actually cut it. Alright, and here we go, we've got ourselves a really nice little cut. So now I'm already gonna install that caliper on the bike to make life actually a little bit easier. So now you gotta take the end of the blue cable, not the magnet which is up there, but the screwed part I was talking about a little bit earlier. And this little part, we're gonna screw that in the hole. So now I'm screwing this one inside. So the thing here, you don't have to completely screw that in. You just want this little threaded part to hold that hose. And now you've damaged your hose, but anyway, we're gonna shorten it, so we're gonna cut it even more. So now you've done that, now it's time to conduct it through the frame. Alright, so now take this side right here and just pull while the other side is getting inside of the frame and is also pulling the brake hose. Well, actually on my bike I have a little cheat code. I can actually unscrew that little part a little bit to get the hose out of the frame and then just put it manually with my hands. So now I'm unscrewing that little part. Alright, then here we go. Now I've got my brake hose. Now I just gotta manually put that inside of that little cap, that little cap that is sitting on the frame that is securing everything, dirt from getting inside of the frame and all. Place that inside, and so now I'm gonna screw that thing back in. Okay, so now completely push the brake hose from this side and pull from that one. Alright, and now you can already start putting some zip ties on this brake hose right here. Oh yeah guys, and by the way, your brake hose has got to go near the wheel. So see this branch right here? Well, it's gonna go on that side, so near the wheel. And it's often a little mistake that people do. They tend to put the cable through here, through the front of the branch. But if you have a crash, your brake hose is just dead. So that's why people put it near the wheel. We're gonna put it like this then later on. Alright, so now we're gonna shorten the hose. So the measurements for this is actually really simple. You just gotta let a little bit of slack on the rear right here so that when your suspension moves, it is actually quite flexible and not too tight. And it actually also can move a little bit. So I'm gonna leave it like this for the moment. So now we're gonna cut it to the measure we need. Alright, so to measure the front part, you actually gotta imagine yourself being on the bike and actually turning your bars at 90 degrees. And at this point, it's gotta be quite tight, but you still gotta have a little bit of slack. So let's just check my case. Alright, so when my bar is in this position, it's gotta go to around right here, somewhere around here, but I'm actually gonna leave a little bit more. Alright, so here is where I'm gonna cut. I left a little bit more than really tight when it was at 90 degrees. So now we're gonna just cut it, and I'm gonna grab a clean rag because there's gonna be a lot of oil dribbling from this part right here. There must be a lot of oil dribbling from there, and in fact there was. Alright, so in here now I've got my lever. Now I'm gonna remove that TRP lever and put my SRAM code RSC lever on there. Alright, so now you gotta take those two little parts you took from the brake hose when you actually cut it and remove that little part with the olive and barb. And those two things you gotta put them before putting any olive and barb on there. So you've got that little boot nut and that sort of big screw. So take your cable, put your protective boot nut, put your screw. Here we go. And now we have to put our olive and barb. And when you receive your new brake, you have an additional olive and barb which we are gonna use because you don't want to reuse your old one. You never want to reuse your old one. And they even give you a tool to screw those in. They do that because many people don't have this kind of tool. This is a T8 Torx wrench. So in my case I have it, so I'm gonna use this one. And yeah, all the tools that are shown in this video are gonna be linked down in the description. But anyway, take your screw, and now we're just gonna screw that inside of the hose. Take this one like this. So now screw that one by pushing it and turning clockwise. And now you just gotta make sure there's no gap between this metallic thing and this hose right here. You gotta make sure there's no gap, because even the smallest gap can make a big difference and your system is going to be completely destroyed. So yeah, just double check that, and now let's pass on putting this red little olive or barb. Alright, so now that we've inserted that little red cap, now we're gonna screw the red cap onto the little barb. Yeah, I think this is what it's called. That little cap is the olive and the screw is the barb. So the olive, we're gonna screw it on the barb. And yeah, to screw it in, you gotta turn it counterclockwise. Alright, here we go. Now it's all screwed in. Now we can insert it inside of the lever and screw that with the little nut that we put before it. Now take your wrench and screw that in. The torque is 8 Newton meters. So then just take your boot and place that onto here. And here we go. Alright, and now you gotta grab your isopropyl alcohol, a clean rag, and just spray on the entire brake top to bottom, because we actually leaked a lot of oil throughout the installation and we don't want any of this oil. And yeah, don't forget to put some SRAM compatible grease on the nut right here. Alright guys, so now we're done. We've placed our brand new brake on the bike, but we still gotta do one more thing, is to bleed it, because a lot of oil just dribbled out from the brake, and now we just gotta replace that oil with some new one. So the whole point of the bleeding is that there's no air in the system, so the whole system is working only on the oil and not on the air. That's the whole point of bleeding. We just want to remove the whole air. And when you service your brakes, this is the thing number one to do, because throughout time there is going to be air that will go inside of your system, and you're gonna just have to remove that by the bleeding process I'm gonna show you right now. Alright, so first of all, you gotta buy a bleeding kit. You can buy it from Sram or something, but I bought it from Park Tool. And yeah, by the way, you can see a lot of my tools are from Park Tool. They're not paying me or anything to say that. I just love their company and everything they're doing. I know it's expensive, but that's a really high quality. So yeah, I bought this Park Tool synthetic oil bleeding kit. If you have the Shimano or the TRP brakes, you're gonna have to use the mineral oil. But for SRAM, you gotta use the .5.1 oil. You can also use the .4, but in any case, you can use like the .5 or the .4.5. I don't know if it even exists, but you can't use anything of that, only the .4 and the .5.1. There's not a big difference, but I prefer the .5.1 because the number is just higher, meaning probably that this is better, but I might be wrong. But what I know is that the difference is really small and you won't even feel it. So anyway, I have the .5.1 with me right now. So out of the whole kit, you're gonna use everything that is on the table right here. So here you are gonna use 2 syringes, one strap like this blue little thing that is gonna keep your pistons on place when you are actually using the lever. As I told earlier, you're gonna have to use your .5.1 Sram oil. And you'll also need these 3 adapters. Those red ones are the same, and this silver one. So as it is a 4-piston brakes, you're gonna use 2 of those blue little things. So now those 2 little blue things, you put them inside of the brake, on the pistons, and with the 12mm spacer, not the 10 that is written on here, but with the 12. So now you can install this stripe right here, and I'm gonna install it right here on the bottom. Alright, so now we're gonna take this first red little spacer and we're gonna put it on one syringe, and now on the other one we're gonna do the exact same thing, but we're also gonna add this little silver piece. So now you're adding, so now this red one and this silver one. So here you go, this is actually your setup for the job. Now let's just start the job. So now we're gonna rotate our bike so that the lever is much higher than the caliper right here, because we actually want the little air bubbles to go up through the hose to actually get out in the syringe. But it might be a little complicated for now. I'm gonna show you later what all of that means. But what you gotta know is that you gotta rotate your bike so the caliper is way lower and all of your hose is actually pointing upwards. So yeah, something like this of a setup is just nice. So now we're gonna fill our syringes with the new .5.1 oil. And as we lost quite a lot of the oil, we're gonna put a little bit more than a usual bleed. So the one without the silver little adapter at the end, this is the one that will go on the upper part, so on the lever, and with the silver is the one that will go on the caliper. So take the one that will go on the lever and fill that, I would say like maybe like 5. Yeah, I'm gonna fill that to 4. I think those are millimeters. And now the bottom one, I'm gonna fill it just a little bit more. Alright, this one I filled it to 7. Alright, now let's start with the upper one. And to get access to that oil bath, we're gonna unscrew a little screw that is unscrewing itself with a T10 Torx wrench.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
So now take your T10 and unscrew that, and when you are actually bleeding your brake, you gotta screw that syringe right in there really fast because the oil is gonna start to get out. But as we lost a ton of oil, we don't have to worry about that. And the best for the screw would be to point upwards. So in my case, I'll just have to turn the handlebar so now it's facing upwards. But anyway, now let's put the syringe with only the red thing adapter at the end. Come here, screw that in. Be careful not to lose that one little bolt. This is really small. This little silver piece is just so genius because you actually don't have to unscrew any screw on the caliper. You just gotta put that in, turn it clockwise, and it's in. That's just amazing, and no oil will be lost because of it. Let me just show you right now. Alright, so now I just forgot one little step is the preparation for the bleeding. And when you've got your syringe full, you gotta put a rag on top and press on the syringe so that there's all of the air bubbles just get out of the syringe. Alright, and when there is no air bubbles, you just close that little clamp. So now the levers that have a contact point adjustment, you gotta turn that little wheel counterclockwise. And I'm talking about this wheel right here, this wheel right here, you gotta turn it anti-clockwise. And for the lever position, it's gonna be at 7.5 or 8 centimeters from the handlebar. And that's the time where you can put your front lever syringe. Alright, so this little silver thing is actually a genius thing because it allows us to actually do the same thing as with the lever, but without screwing it and just like pushing it and hearing a little click so that when you want to get it out, so all the oil just keeps inside of there and there's no loss of oil. So that's just a genius thing. So I'm gonna show you right now how to set it up. Alright, so here is the little hole. Right in there, you gotta put a 4mm Allen key and unscrew that only a quarter of a turn, just like this. There's just a tiny bit of oil that is dripping out of there, but that's fine. Now you gotta take your little silver piece and put that inside, and you're gonna hear a little click. Alright, here we go, mine is in, and now I gotta turn it anti-clockwise 1 full turn. If you go more than 2 turns, you're gonna unscrew this little screw, and then a lot of oil will just drip on your floor, and it's not gonna be any good because you're gonna have to fill the entire system with some new oil. So that's definitely something to avoid. This is perfect, and now our system must work. Alright, so now to bleed the system, you gotta just play with those syringes. One is going up, so the other one is going down. And then the other way, one is going down and the other one is going up. That's a fairly easy algorithm. So take this upper one, for example, push on it, and you will see that on this bottom one, it's just filling in. But for the moment, you can use only one. So you push on it and you actually pull on it, and as you can see, there is a lot of those air little bubbles that are coming out of the system. That's exactly what you want. Pushing on this one, a lot of bubbles are coming out. Alright, so I just took a little break at school and now I'm back home and ready to finish this job. So now that we're sure there are no air bubbles that are coming out of the system, now we can start closing the system a little bit and getting off those syringes. So the order is to start with the caliper one, and then we're gonna finish with the lever one. So now we're gonna push most of the liquid from the bottom all the way to the upper one, and right after that we gotta close that syringe hose by using this little clamp. So now the hose is closed. Now we gotta close the system by turning clockwise that little silver adapter for Sram brake, and now we gotta turn it clockwise until it stopped. Alright, so now it has stopped, but don't remove it, not yet. We still need it right here. So now let's pass to the lever. So here what you'll want to do is pressurize the system a little bit and make sure there are no air bulbs coming out of there by just playing a little bit with the lever. So now I'm 100% sure there are no air bulbs left in there. So now push a little bit to pressurize the system a little more, and get ready to screw your little screw with a T10 Torx wrench. So now I finished pressurizing it. So now we're gonna close the hose exactly as we did with the lower one. So right here. So now this is gonna be a quite fast step. So you gotta prepare your clean rag, your T10 Torx wrench, your little bolt, your T10 little bolt, and your isopropyl alcohol. So now we're gonna unscrew that syringe. We're gonna wipe the oil that is dripping from it, and really fast we're gonna screw in this little screw. Unscrewing the syringe, wiping the oil, taking your nut. Now just clean that quite well. Alright, so the torque on the nut is from 1.1 to 1.7 Newton meters. It's really not a lot. You can go over 2, because if not you're gonna crack that little screw. It's really weak, and you really don't have to go crazy on that one. Just a tiny bit and it's okay. Now take your isopropyl alcohol, spray some on there, and wipe it clean. Alright, perfect. Now we're done up there. Now we can pass to the bottom right here. So now double check that your system is closed, that you completely screwed that silver adapter, and so when it is, you can just pull that out and no oil will drip from there, because this is a really smart design. So just take that off and screw that a little more with your 4mm Allen key. That nut right there is also from 1.5 to 1.7 Newton meter, which is the same as on the lever, meaning that it's really low. Now take your rag and clean the inside a little bit. So this one seems nice, and now we can put back on our little plastic protective thing. Alright, and now we gotta remove those brake piston holders out of there. Remove them. Now take your isopropyl alcohol, spray some inside on the whole caliper. The reason for this is that some oil might have gone on the pistons, and when you're gonna put those brake pads, there might be some contamination. So we want to avoid that as much as we can. Alright, now take your brake pads, and now you can insert that in there and screw with the actually given screw and secure it with that protective pin. So put your brake pads in there. With a 2.5mm Allen key, screw that in and secure that with the little pin. Alright, so here we go. Now you can actually put your rear wheel back on the place, but I'm gonna change the rotor a little later. I don't think I gotta make a video on how to change a rotor. In my case, it's just a 6 bolts installation. So I just gotta take those 6 bolts, take the disc off, put a new one, screw those 6 bolts, and here we go, I've got my new disc. So the old oil that you have right here, if it's discolored, don't put it back in the bottle with the new .5.1 oil. But if it's brand new like me, never used, actually, well, brand new, you can actually put that back in there. So after this service, don't forget to actually clean your syringes from the outside, from the inside. Do a proper cleaning to your syringes, because you don't want any contamination with this oil and the next oils you're gonna use. Even though it's the same oil, this might be a little dirtier than the next one, or you know, just those small little details that will make all the difference. Alright guys, so here we go. Now I've got my new SRAM code RSC brake on the bike. We've done an incredible job. We bled the brakes, we did an internal cable routing, we shortened the hoses, in all of this in this video with only one brake. So thank you guys for watching, and here are the other episodes of the TDS repair series that will guide you through your entire bike and how to service, even the suspension. My last video was on servicing the fork and changing the air chamber, also servicing the damper and the lower legs, actually everything, making a full service of my front suspension. That was just epic. So I strongly suggest you to see that. But anyway, all the tools are in the description, as I told you in the beginning of the video. But anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe to my channel, leave a like, and see you in the next video.